So I guess we will begin. Um, for everyone who's watching this on YouTube, welcome again. After a long hiatus, but you wouldn't you wouldn't notice it probably. But yeah, we are back to our story. So let's go. However, he proclaimed to her that a witch resided within the mansion, and that he too was cursed. Everyone who got close to him lost their lives. Do you think that what he told her was all nonsense? A lie devised to chase her out of the house. The truth of the matter shall come to light in time. Despite Michelle's assertions, the white-haired girl decided she would take up residence within the mansion. This era's white-haired girl was younger than the others. She was still in her early teens, young enough to be seen as still a child. But she was neither as self-centered nor irresponsible as you might expect from someone her age. She was very delicate and reserved, and acted with a great deal of modesty and restraint. The accusations of her being a criminal and a sinner were grossly inappropriate. Nevertheless, she was still chased from her home, barely managing to flee to this mansion with her life. Now, the white-haired girl thought it would be rude to simply take up space in the mansion, so she chased down the master, Michelle, and asked, is there anything I can do to help? I will clean or cook or do anything, just let me know. I want to repay you for allowing me to stay here. You need not feel indebted to me. The weight of that obligation will only turn into disdain. But I can't just stay here and do nothing. Do whatever you like, as long as you do not enter my room. This is all I ask of you. He said emotionlessly, turning away and walking off. Michelle was not, I believe, spurning her. He was merely disinterested. He did not treat her disrespectfully, nor did he seem averse to her presence. Words simply did not seem to affect him at all. Not only was the mansion a prison for his body was also a prison ensnaring his heart. I should still do whatever I can. But she did not let that get her down. In fact, she might have even interpreted his disinterest as kindness. Though he was a bit standoffish, he did not attempt to cause her harm. He was nothing like the people who had accused her of being a witch and forced her to flee for her life. And she was deeply grateful for that. Thus began their quiet life together. Michelle, who avoided contact with others, and the white-haired girl, who had taken a great deal of abuse from others. Two people who knew hardly anything about one another, who were too distant to really be said to be living together. Michelle spent most of his day in his chambers, so they only ever saw each other occasionally, and they hardly ever spoke. Though they stayed in the same house, they both still lived solitary lives. Nonetheless, the white-haired girl wanted to get to know Michelle better. She wanted to know why he called himself cursed. why he lived alone in this dark mansion, how many days, how many years he had spent here in solitude. And while she waited for the opportunity, she also started doing things around the house. The first project she set out to take care of was cleaning. As the windows were all firmly shut, her only source of light was candles. For whatever reason, there was a great deal of candles stored in the cellar. She wondered where on earth he had acquired so many, but she never found the opportunity to ask him. It was difficult to even see all the dust and cobwebs with only candlelight, and considering the poor airflow through the house, she was afraid her efforts were going to be in vain. Still, she persisted, sweeping and wiping things down, one room at a time. Eventually, she made her way to the library. The dust that had settled there was much heavier than in any other room. With each breath, she had to fight back coughs. It was not a room one would normally be comfortable spending much time in, but the sight of so many bulky volumes lining the shelves sent her heart aflutter with delight. They are books. Incredible, real books. The white-haired girl had never seen a book before. She had heard people describe them, but that was the first time she had ever seen one for herself. Parchment was a very valuable commodity in that era. It was something monks or scholarly priests made use of, and not a material one could easily acquire without some degree of social rank. Books were not printed with machines, but copied by hand. A single volume took an incredible amount of work to create. Even the process of binding was an art. Standing before a shelf, she stared intently at the spines. There's so much dust. Does he not read any of them? Just a peek. Just a tiny little peek. She said, making excuses to the empty room as she reached her hand toward one of the books. The tome that caught her eye was on the upper shelf. It bore gorgeous jade embossing and looked like it belonged in a treasure chest. Almost... Though she tended to act older than her age, the white-haired girl was still in her early teens and not especially tall. Even standing tiptoe, it was still just barely within reach. At long last, her slender fingers made contact with the spine, and she began to pull the book toward her. Oh. The library had sat abandoned for some time, causing the covers to stick together. So when she attempted to pull one out, several others tilted with it. And then almost all the books on the shelf came avalanching down onto her. Ow! The white-haired girl groaned, buried under a mountain of parchment. She hoped she had not damaged any of her host's valuable collection, for the mess was enough of a setback already in her attempt to express her gratitude. Looking around, she saw one volume that was almost torn in half. She did not know whether it was in that condition before or if it had happened in the fall. But nonetheless, she felt horribly guilty. Sitting there, unable to get back to her feet, tears began welling in her eyes. Then, suddenly, a shadow fell over the dejected girl. It took a book in its hand and returned it to the shelf. For a brief moment, the shadow's hand reached hesitantly toward the white-haired girl, then changed course toward another book. It was Michel. There was a hint of perplexity in his otherwise emotionless eyes. Perhaps he had heard the noise and come to see what had caused it. I'm so sorry. Your books, What were you doing? I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to make a mess. I didn't mean to damage such precious books. There's no need to panic. I'm sorry. You make it sound as though I'm admonishing you. What? Did you want to read a book? I do, but that's not what I originally came here to clean. Clean? Yes, I felt guilty simply being idle. I did say you could do as you pleased, but you have no responsibility to clean anything. I just ended up making a bigger mess anyway. You needn't apologize. Okay. If you want to read, help yourself to any of the books. But I don't know how to read. I just thought the cover was pretty, so I wanted to hold it. You're free to use them however you wish. If looking at them is enough for you, by all means. These are all your books, aren't they? They are. That's incredible. You have so many. It must have taken you a long time to acquire them all. 1 per month. What? My family sends me 1 every month. Every month? The white-haired girl turned her gaze back toward the shelves, squinting her eyes and beginning to count. When she finished, she was in awe. There were in excess of 100 books on the shelves, which meant he had lived there in solitude for many years. She was at a loss for words. They are dull tomes, dreadfully inoffensive and not even interesting enough to waste a few hours with. Decoration is all they're good for. I see. If you can put them to some use, then perhaps my having them won't be entirely meaningless to me anymore. I'm going to return to my room. Don't feel obliged to clean up. Just a minute. Was there something else? Could you tell me your name? I just realized I never asked for your name. Not knowing what to call you with will make conversation awkward. I'm sorry. I think it skipped. How do I? Oh yeah. You don't need my name to. I want to though. Michelle. Michelle, like the Archangel. The name suits you quite well. Suits me. It does, although it's difficult to see you in the dark. You seem to be a very handsome man, befitting of your name. I beg to differ. Giving me his name is the highest form of mockery. I expect the real Archangel is probably rather annoyed by it. I don't know. I think it's a wonderful name. And you're... No, never mind. Oh, my name? My name is Giselle. Please call me Giselle. Oh, thank goodness. For what? That I was able to get your name and talk to you for a little bit. We haven't seen much of each other since I first arrived, so I'm glad that I got to hear your voice. So very glad. You gain nothing by speaking to me. You have no responsibility to do so, and there is no need for you to feel joy about it. I'm not pleased out of some sense of responsibility or necessity. It's just depressing not being able to have a conversation with someone living in the same house. You do not understand me at all. As I said on the first day, my curse will one day kill you. But I'm still alive, aren't I? You are welcome to believe I am lying, or that I am merely out of my mind. But it will be too late when you realize the truth. I'll be fine, I'm sure. And if I do die because of your curse, I promise I won't hold a grudge. Could you possibly be keeping away from me out of concern? No, I simply have no interest in interacting with anyone. I would like to interact with you. If you don't mind, that is. As I told you, you have nothing to gain from that. I have nothing, not even words to give you. My body is but a shell. Even if I were not cursed, my presence would do naught but cause you discomfort. I don't think that's true. I don't believe that there's anyone in this world with absolutely nothing. There's plenty inside you. You simply haven't noticed it yet. And not all of it will only cause others pain either. If you truly believe those words, then you are a foolhardy girl. How can you trust someone you only just met? For that matter, how do you not resent everyone? Resent them? I can take a guess as to why people call you a witch, and why you had to flee all the way to this mansion. Your white hair and red eyes. That abnormal, seemingly inhuman appearance drew their condemnation. And I can think of any number of reasons they might have started treating you less than human. Perhaps people around you experienced misfortune, or perhaps there was a natural disaster, a famine, a plague, some kind of external phenomenon, and you were their scapegoat. Yes, you are by large correct. Then that would make me as unworthy of your trust as anyone else. I make no claim to having your interests in mind. Goodbye. If you don't mind, could you teach me how to read sometime? Did you listen to anything I said? I listened, yes. I have no intention of idolizing you. I don't expect you to do anything for me, and I don't wish to burden you in any way. I simply wish to be allowed to be at your side. It does not matter to me what kind of person you might be. This is all I want. I apologize for keeping you. Please consider it if it's not too much trouble. As the master of the house, Michel made his way out of the library. He appeared to be slightly rattled. Perhaps the white-haired girl's determination had ignited something in his chained heart. Or perhaps there was something else. She stared toward the darkness into which Michel had disappeared. Then she carefully wrapped her arms around the jade-embossed tome, a soft smile spreading across her lips. He's a decent man, I'm sure of it. We're alike, he and I. And thus began to blossom within her a faint sense of fellowship, as someone who also knew solitude. I'm sorry for all of in the background. Okay. It had been about a week since the white-haired girl had taken up residence in the mansion. Staying in that house deprived of light was, I imagine, a very claustrophobic experience. To anyone blessed enough to have sunlight as a part of their everyday lives, it would have been unbearable. But for her, the mansion, with its prison walls and lack of either illumination or recreation, was the one place she could find respite. She and Michelle continued to be distant, however. He spent most of his time in his chambers, which he had explicitly told the white-haired girl to stay out of, leaving her unable to close that gap. Nonetheless, on the occasions they did cross paths in the hallway, their eyes would meet, if but briefly. It was never for more than a few seconds. Whenever she saw him, she made a point of giving him a little smile. He never said anything, but still, when she had first arrived, she would not have even met her gaze. He would not have even met her gaze. He seemed to be taking more and more notice of her. One day, the white-haired girl stood in the cellar, a frown on her face. Well, this is troubling. I can't go down to the village, but if we don't do something soon... The cellar was where their food was stored, an assortment of non-perishables and dried foods, smoked meats and cheeses. Her daily meals were taken from the supplies there. However, the stockpile was beginning to grow quite small. Were she not on the run, she could have gone to the village to procure more. Or perhaps, were she a little tougher, she could have captured a wild animal for its meat. But master, you know a young, delicate thing like her was hardly up to the task of hunting for food. How does he normally get his supplies, I wonder? From there, other questions about Michelle started rising in her mind. No matter how lifeless he seemed, surely he still had to eat, right? The white-haired girl nodded, then made her way out of the cellar, intending to head for his bedchamber. Oh, but on her way there, she spotted him standing by the entrance, staring motionless at the door lit by a single candle. He appeared to be waiting for something. May I ask you a question? Go on. I was just down in the cellar, and I noticed we were running low on food. Do you normally go down to the village to restock? I haven't been outside in 10 years. And how do you... What if I told you I don't eat? What? That I am not of this world, and as such I have no need of sustenance. What would you think of that? That sounds very, economical. If you can survive without having to eat, there is one less thing to worry about. If it were possible, I'd like to have that ability too. It would seem trying to frighten you is a waste of time. Was I supposed to be afraid? Never mind. It doesn't matter. You asked about the food in the cellar. It's getting to be about the time. Wait, and you will find out. What do you... It's here. Oh? If you want to know where my supplies come from, open the door. But I'm in hiding. There is no one at the door anymore. The knock is nothing more than a signal. A signal? The white-haired girl turned toward Michel to press him for more information, but he averted his gaze. Find the answer yourself, he seemed to be saying. She took several moments to gather her will, then marched over to the door. So bright. The sunlight, which she had not seen in some time, was so bright it seemed to burn her eyes. Although the sun itself had not gotten any brighter, she had simply spent so much time in the dark, her eyes were no longer accustomed to that much light. The color of her eyes made them quite sensitive to light already, so when she stepped outside, her whole world went bone white. The white-haired girl stood motionless for 10, perhaps 15 seconds, and when her eyes had finally adjusted to the light, what's this? She noticed a crate on the ground at her feet. She turned her head back to ask Michel about the box, but the mansion was so dark it appeared to be wholly severed from the outside world. From where she stood, she was unable to distinguish Michel from the shadows. A pang of nervousness struck her. She wanted to return to that darkness as quickly as possible. The white-haired girl had come to yearn for that world, without light more than the one with. The crate was fairly hefty. The slightly bald girl had considerable difficulty bringing it into the house, but eventually she did manage to drag it through the front door. And then everything went dark once more, except for the faint flicker of candlelight floating in the air. You can leave it there. I'll take care of the rest. What's... Without a word, Michel approached her and the box, withdrawing a knife that he had evidently kept hidden somewhere on his person. With it, he cut through the rope that bound the box. Go on, open it up. At his insistence, she placed her hand upon the lid. She had no idea what lay inside this unexpected delivery. Whoever had brought it was already long gone. Staring at the strange box, she was racked with nervousness. However, what she found when she pushed aside the lid was completely ordinary food. Is something amusing? It was just rather anticlimactic. Here I was worried about what might be inside. We were just talking about the supplies in the cellar. So we were. It completely slipped my mind. This should last us for some time. It's all preserved, just like what's in the cellar. But I don't understand. Who would deliver all of this to you? There should be a book in there as well. What? Oh, there it is. In the library, he said that his family sends him one book a month. Does that mean this box came from them? If so, then why did the person who delivered this leave without speaking to him? What happened between him and his family? Is he here because they want him here? Or because he chose to be here? Take the book to the library, please. I will bring the rest of the supplies to the cellar. But it's a big box. I'm sure you could use some help carrying it. That won't be necessary. Take the book and go. But... fine. Then stay here. I'll take care of everything. Wait, hold on, please. What is it? You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. And, I'm not trying to pry, but I can't help but be curious. Say what you have to say, please. I was wondering if you could tell me why you live here in this mansion. Why did whoever delivered this box leave before you even opened the door? Could you perhaps be imprisoned here? I told you this is the very first day. I am cursed. It's only natural for a cursed man to live in a cursed house. Yes, but that's such a vague answer. I don't understand why you're in the situation you are. I don't know how you feel about it. There's so much I don't know. And I'm not even sure if your curse actually exists. I see. That is a perfectly reasonable doubt from your point of view. Having been branded a witch because of your appearance, it would make sense that you would think my curse might be fabricated, or perhaps a metaphor for something else. Alright then, come with me. What? I'll show you my curse. As he turned on his heels, the white-haired girl caught a glimpse of what appeared to be a smirk on his face, like the whole thing was some kind of sick joke. The smile carved into his mask was far colder than any look of annoyance or rejection. But despite the twinge of nervousness, she still followed after Michelle. As much as he might have stood out in a crowd, with such weight and long hair, his presence was almost entirely eroded away by darkness. She felt that he could simply fade away into nothingness at any moment. Many things are buried here. Huh? Mice, insects, wild cats, and dogs. Have you ever thought it strange how little life there seemed to be around this mansion? You're right. I haven't seen a single creature since I arrived. The only sound you can hear is the wind blowing. Now that you mention it, it did seem peculiar. They were all killed by me. Or rather, they lost their lives because of me. You have your answer now. A butterfly fluttered its way into the ruined garden, dancing up and down through the air. Michel held out a finger before himself, and the butterfly, mistaking it for a branch, drifted down upon it to rest its wings. Had the scene stopped there, it would have been a picturesque moment. All that comes in contact with me loses its life. My skin, the breath I exhale, my flesh and blood is poison to all life. But the butterfly's movements began to slow. It spread its wings in one last futile attempt to fight gravity. And then, without warning, it shriveled up into a dark, dry husk. It's dead, all dried up and lifeless. Like it's been dead for days. It's like his finger drained all the life out of it. Is this his curse? Is that even possible? But I saw it with my own eyes. If this is his curse, though, it explains much. There are more than just insect and animal corpses buried here too. Servants who came to visit me long ago, are here beneath the ground, under our very feet. That's why the servant leaves before I open the door. Should he touch me, should he get near me, his very life is in danger. No one is interested enough in seeing me to take that risk. No one will have anything to do with me. Nary a soul even wishes to see my face. Now you understand what I meant when I said I would eventually kill you. So that's why you have never once touched me. When I knocked the bookstone in the library, you didn't offer your hand to help me up. And only one of us ever made contact with the box at the entrance at the time. When I offered to help you carry it, you refused. Because you didn't want your finger to accidentally brush against mine. My actions were not out of concern for you. I simply dislike people. Others' interests mean nothing to me. What an odd face you're making. Do you not believe my curse is real? No, I do. It is certainly irrational, inexplicable, unbelievable, but you've shown me more than enough evidence. And I don't believe you're lying to me right now either. In which case, you now understand how dangerous it is to be near me. You said that if you left, you would be killed. But it's been some time since then. If you're careful to cover your tracks, you could make your escape. You do not belong here. He was telling the truth about being cursed. What a cruel burden to have to bear. I can't imagine just how much he's given up on. How many lives he's inadvertently taken. And how he must have felt every time it happened. How much pain that loneliness must have gotten him. How much despair he must carry in his heart. How much sorrow must be weighing down on him. So, no. I will not leave. I will stay here with you. Leave this place. No, I will not. Why? Why do you insist upon remaining in this house after learning what I can do? You have no reason to stay. Tell me then, why do you try to drive me out? If you don't care for others, as you say, if you're not concerned about anyone else, then what does it matter what I do? What does it matter if I die to your curse? You're a very kind-hearted man. You've been watching out for me since the day I arrived, doing whatever you can to not inadvertently kill me, to not afflict me with your curse. No. Here's what I think. No one capable of showing genuine care for others can honestly, truly dislike all people. They can't possibly be indifferent. No, That day we met before the stained glass window, you heard me out. You listened to my plight. You didn't try to chase me out. That day I thought you to be a good person, and I still believe that. I simply assumed you would leave on your own when it was safe. I never thought you would be so foolish as to want to stay in a house like this with a man like me. How does that make me foolish? Do you not value your life? Are you not afraid of death? Do you not find me unpleasant? The thing I fear most is loneliness. You're probably right that by now I could safely sneak away, get myself somewhere far from here. But even if I did, I would inevitably find myself in the same situation. The only way I can avoid that fate is to stay away from everyone, to live in solitude with no one to talk to. I know you understand how that feels. It terrifies me. I'm afraid of having to spend day after day with no one to talk to, no one to share my experience, my thoughts, my feelings with. If that's what awaits me out there, then I want to live with you. I want you to be an essential part of my life. Impossible. Please, don't chase me out. You are a cruel girl. Never again will I allow myself to get close to someone, only to watch them die. Never again. My mother was the first to die. It happened shortly after my birth. Next was my wet nurse. 2 deaths could be considered a coincidence, but as the number rose, it became clear that I was cursed, and I was forbidden from making contact with anyone, even at home. Regardless, being in the same house, accidents will happen. Numerous people lost their lives. Attendants unfamiliar with me, or those who simply brushed up against me by mistake. I couldn't take it any longer. So you chose to move here, this remote mansion, to keep yourself away from your family. You weren't imprisoned here, you elected to live alone, so you wouldn't hurt anyone. For better or worse, I was born to a noble house, so rather than abandon me, they've provided me the means to live out of sight. I will be very careful. I will do everything I can to ensure no accidents occur, to keep you from being alone again. I will not for any reason touch you. You have my promise. Your curse takes the life of anything you touch. I've been here for a while and death has not befallen me yet. As long as I do not touch you, there shouldn't be a problem. Also, and I apologize if this is simply me reading too much into things, but I feel like we're two of a kind. I fear being utterly alone more than anything, and I think you understand just how scary that is. So, why are you so stubbornly insistent on it being me? I'm sure there is someone else out there, someone you're meant to be with. You may not have found them yet, but I believe someone like you eventually will. Because unlike me, you still have the vigor to press forward. It has to be you. I'm certain of it. Why? Because, well, you can't tell me. No, I can't just... Please don't get upset with me. I think... I might really, really love you. His was a power that evoked images of witches or demons, the unclean and the impure. A mere touch was all it took for him to strip man and beast alike of its life. God has quite a cruel streak to bestow such a power upon such a beautiful young man. And a strange power it was indeed, like something out of a fairy tale. Like something confined to words upon the page, it seemed otherworldly and believable. Nonetheless, As he had demonstrated to the white-haired girl, his peculiar powers were indeed real. That said, the world has its fair share of oddities. It just so happens that those curiosities tend to remain hidden away, known only to a few. Although you have laid eyes upon a number of unusual phenomena yourself, Master, the doors of the past through which we have passed, this very mansion, and as a matter of fact, the two of us. Now, as you just saw, the white-haired girl found herself enraptured with this man and his accursed power. How do you think Michelle acted in response to her proclamation? He had spent so long refusing to interact with others, no, unable to interact with them. As such, he was unsure how to respond. After standing there expressionless for a few moments, he muttered, "I'll consider it." And with that, he returned to his chambers. While he was not someone who wore his heart on his sleeve, I personally do not believe he was completely devoid of emotions. He had simply forgotten how to express them in his extended solitude. So I think he was, in that moment, in a state of complete panic. She had, after all, just assaulted him with a stream of incomprehensible declarations. That knowing the truth, she still wished to remain in the mansion. And that knowing the truth, she loved him. The love she had declared for Michelle was not a fleeting puppy love. There was genuine tenderness and warmth to her words. But he had gone through his life shunned, feared, pushed away. To him, that was normal. He had never given anyone reason to have any fondness for him, so he found himself utterly unsure how to take the affection she was showing. Of course, he was not the only one rattled by the whole affair. Oh dear. Several days had passed since Michelle had asked for time to think. He had still yet to show himself again. This is my fault. The white-haired girl paced anxiously through the halls on the off chance she might run into him. As per request of his, though, she kept her distance from his chambers. Nevertheless, she was beginning to worry about the fact that he had secluded himself away for so long. So she worked up her courage and made her way to his room. What if he doesn't want to see me ever again? I didn't consider it might be overstepping my bounds. Before opening my mouth, every step she took was slow and laborious. Her mind raced with worry and doubt. I should at least tell him I'm sorry. Rather than out of the desire to know how he felt, she was compelled by guilt and a desire to apologize. After walking for some time, she arrived at the door, sitting in an utterly unlit hallway. She drew in a breath of musty air, then let it out, repeating the process several times. Next, she reached her hand up to knock on the door, then pulled it back, also doing this a number of times. Oh, how adorable she was. I wanted nothing more than to give her a little nudge. After all, she was too sweet a girl for her worries to be anything but misplaced. I just can't find the courage. Maybe I should come back another day. But what's the point of waiting? I need to apologize and get the weight off his back now. She gathered her courage once more, this time determined she would do it. The white-haired girl moved her small fist toward the door, which then swung open. Oh, I'm sorry. Please, you must announce your presence. I almost walked right into you. Are you in that much of a hurry for a mishap? I'm sorry. And I believe I told you to stay away from my chambers. You did, so I spent a long time debating whether I would, but I decided I really wanted to tell you this. Oh, well, actually, I'm truly sorry. What? The other day I could barely manage to get the words in my head all the way to my mouth. There was no room in my mind for anything else. I shoved my own thoughts and feelings into your face, not considering that might not be what you wanted, just running non-stop, not thinking at all. I was terribly disrespectful to you, completely selfish. You're a kind-hearted man. I truly believe that. But you were only being courteous because you're a nice man. I'm sure you have little interest in the affections of a queer little girl. So, I would love it if I could stay here. It would be a wonderful blessing. But if you really don't want me here, if my feelings are imposing upon you, then I apologize. I'm sorry, and I'll take my leave of this house. I'm sorry. Don't be. My mind went blank for a moment. What? I find it difficult to comprehend you. The other day you were firm in your intentions to stay, and now you say you'll leave without a struggle. You holed up in your room for so long that I thought you didn't want me around. To be honest, I want to stay here, I do. I think you should do whatever pleases you. Huh. You can stay, or you can leave. I will not pressure you to do one or the other. So, I'm not imposing. To tell you the truth, I had to think about that for some time. However, I have not come to something of a solution. Since you're here, come into my room. What? But I thought I wasn't allowed to. To prevent what almost happened a few moments ago, so we don't accidentally run into each other. Sorry. You're forgiven. Now come in. Okay. Is this a necklace? If that's what it looks like to you, then I suppose it means I succeeded. Pick it up. It has a little bell. It's adorable. Please make an effort to wear that while you're in the house. Because it's so dark, there will always exist the risk that we might accidentally bump into one another. So I tried to come up with a way to reduce that risk. Does that mean you didn't leave your room because you were working on this? That's right. What other reason would I have? I think most people would assume that it was because they had put you in a bad mood, or that you didn't want to see them. I have little sense of how most people see the world. Sorry. I appreciate it though. I'm really glad to know that you put so much thought into a life together with me. It would be difficult not to after the other day. I'm so happy right now. I can't think of any better word to describe it. I couldn't be happier. You're being dramatic. To tell you the truth, I feel a little bad about it. Why? It seems rather impertinent to affix a bell to someone. You're not livestock, you're a person. That's why you turned it into a necklace? Thank you very much. I'll keep it on me at all times. I really, truly appreciate it, Lord Michel. Don't call me Lord, please. Alright then, I'll just call you Michel. And will you please call me Giselle? The windows. What? If we could open the windows. Never mind. I was just thinking you wouldn't need the bell at all if we could get some light in here. They can't be opened? They're rusted shut. All the windows have been shuttered for as long as I've been here. I assumed you had boarded them all up. That was done long before I ever arrived. After so many years here, though, I hardly consider it an inconvenience anymore. It also serves to repel wanderers. Oh, really? Is there something odd about that? No. It's just, I realized I had the wrong impression about a number of things. As I learn more, I see things in a different light. See in a different light. And I'm sure there's still plenty more for me to learn. Of all the people I have ever met, you are perhaps the most difficult to predict. Not only do you have no aversion to the darkness, Dark has always been a close friend of mine. Which isn't to say I dislike the sun. Its light can simply be a bit too strong for me. I'm like some kind of unholy monster that can't be exposed to sunlight. You're anything but unholy. My name would suit you much better than me. That day when I first saw Giselle, oh yeah, there it is. You see, in this game, there are times when backlog turns into something else than was presented. And stuff that was happening to the screen was probably a signal that I should look up the backlog for the first time. So yeah, some of the words are crossed out, and there is a commentary in the backlog. This happens, I will take this time to hydrate myself. This is, a thing that happens occasionally in the story, and it's probably a good idea to open the backlog sometimes. Yeah, but let's return to reading. That day when I first saw Giselle, I was wary of her, apprehensive. I didn't want her anywhere near me, but... Oh, was there another thing? No, sorry. As my doubts about her faded, I began feeling something very different. As though the lump in my heart had been melted away. I began to yearn for her to be at my side, knowing full well it couldn't possibly last, knowing full well how foolish it was. I found myself captivated by her. I found myself wishing to have her stay with me. Oh wow. Yeah, I think I would actually like to end the stream for today.